ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. In accordance with Regulation 14L of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, this meeting is being audio recorded and the recording will be published on the town's website within 14 days. Members of the public are cautioned against taking any action as a result of a council decision tonight until such time as the minutes of the meeting are published or have been advised in writing by the council's administration with regard to any particular decision. Elected members are asked to ensure the use of their microphones for the purposes of the audio recording. We declare the meeting open at 7:01 p.m. We also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, in particular the Whadjuk people and their connection with our own Lake Clermont. Item 2, record of attendance. Approved leave of absence, nil. Apologies, Councillor Kate Main and Councillor Graham Cameron. Electronic attendance is nil. Item 3, disclosures of interest. Councillor Ryan Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to item 13.2.1, 14 Chester Road, Claremont, reconsideration of decision on application for additions and alterations to heritage-listed dwelling. I declare a direct financial interest in this as I'm a director of a professional services firm which has an ongoing working relationship with the architectural firm used for this development. As a result, I will be leaving the room for this item when discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Item 4, response to previous public questions taken on notice, nil. 5, public question time. Now, during public question time and also public statements, I implore you, just like we're listening to you, for you to also in the gallery to maintain a sense of quiet stillness, as we should say. Asking now Mr. J. Leary of Claremont to please come forward, please. Public question time. Or if you could ask each question one by one and we'll provide an answer to each question.
And I should say, broadly speaking, we sort of support the concept of improving the laneways but are sort of concerned about the scope of the project. And so I guess our first question is, why does the council sort of think it appropriate to treat laneways like roads and sort of consider widening, lighting, drainage, guttering?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. So the response to that question is the town's existing network of right-of-ways is predominantly privately owned and predominantly in poor repair. Adjoining property owners are required to use the right-of-way network for access, and under the local planning scheme, where it's practical, and concerns have been raised by these owners over the state of the network. In addition, the network is poorly drained and in the past has contributed to flooding of adjoining properties. As you can see in the report, which I think you have indicated you've read, the proposal for widening is proposed to be removed from the strategy tonight, and lighting is to be negotiated with adjacent owners when construction proposals are presented, so as to reduce the impact on neighbours.
Mr. Lim.
Thank you. My second question is, will the council, in sort of considering the new laneway project, consider other impacts on residents? For example, in having laneways more sort of usable, to put them that way, there's obviously more traffic, more noise, but also, and probably our greatest concern, is the impact which all of the project works have on trees and vegetation. And obviously in people's backyards there's a lot of trees, and we have a very, very old tree in our property which we're very protective of and abuts the laneway. So interested to know what consideration there will be of impacts on residents.
Thank you. So I guess this response probably more, I guess that question you asked is slightly different to the one in writing, but I'll answer that bit first, which is, as indicated in that first response to question one, the proposed revision to the strategy being considered tonight no longer includes the widening of the network. Hence, that should limit the impact on vegetation and trees, and I guess you'd say that close to the current boundaries of private property. Properly paving the existing narrow network is unlikely to increase noise impacts from the network on adjacent residents. I mean, your question, you talk about the construction noise and such, and I think that it's difficult to answer that really on the fly, but I mean, in all construction works that we do, we would, one of the considerations that is done in planning for road construction is trying to ameliorate the impacts upon residents, and so the town would factor that into any construction program, just like we would with footpath programs and road upgrade programs.
Question 3.
Yep. Question 3 sort of goes to the level of consultation that will occur in relation to each individual laneway project.
So, response to that question is, in addition to the recommendation tonight, which is to take the revised right-of-way strategy out for a secondary consultation process, it's also intended in due course to have direct consultation with adjoining residents, and that will occur when specific proposals for closure and dedication are prepared for each right-of-way. And also as part of that, when we start preparing construction plans or construction drawings, there'd be a consultation process at that time. So the intent is, I guess, to consult fully with all adjoining property owners as we develop the strategy and as we identify which right-of-ways will be prioritised and constructed.
Question 4.
Question 4 is, how much will it cost residents, either by way of an increase in general rates or specific area rates?
Thank you for that question. So as indicated in the report to Council tonight, it is proposed that the redevelopment of the laneways will be funded from the town's capital works program over the next 10 years, and that will be achieved through reductions in the footpath renewal program and reductions in the road renewal works. The net effect is that funding from other programs can be redirected to this program as a priority project for the town. Therefore, no additional funding will be required from adjoining owners or from an increase in rates specifically for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Now calling Mr. Reg Bateman of Claremont, please.
Firstly, excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk tonight and ask this question. There's a bit of background to it. My question is, when a dangerous hazard and safety issue is identified, what is Council's time frame for taking action to resolve that dangerous road issue? Acknowledging that once the dangerous road is recognised, Council can be held legally responsible for accidents, deaths that might occur in that scenario under duty of care. The question came from a report on the 4th of March where it was reported that Mayor Peter Telford and Councillor Kate Main said that hazard-prone roads would be assessed by the town administration, which has prompted the question. What I'd like to be able to do after I've received the answer is to just provide a bit of background to the reasoning, and I have instead of going on and on and on, I'd just like to have a little handout for councillors to consider.
Mr. Bateman, it's not normally our procedure. You ask a question and we give an answer. That's normally the way the question time works.
Right. Well, this is new to me.
Pardon?
This is new to me.
No, welcome.
Yeah.
We welcome your attendance here tonight. So what we'll do is, have you got any other preamble, we'll call it, to your question that you'd like to share with us now?
Yeah, I could. What I'd like to do is thank the council officers to start with. They've been really helpful.
Right.
This is an ongoing issue that's been going for 2 to 3 years. It's nothing. It might seem new to everybody else, but it's been going on for a long time. Previous council provided a lot of roadblocks, if I could put it that way, as to when I sought information about traffic and traffic volumes. Ultimately, late in September last year, I sought information from the council under freedom of information, and the freedom of information officer was really fantastic. Went and got some information. I looked at. I couldn't understand it, and then I had the traffic engineer look at it, and he asked some more questions about more historical information, and she came back and gave me more information. And that traffic information was extremely valuable. My concern has always been, I'm a Victoria Avenue resident. I've been watching what I consider to be a really dangerous situation developing over the last few years, particularly with a lot of school kids walking home from school. There's been a lot of e-bikes, and most particularly in that area where we are, there's a lot of older people, including me, and every evening everybody wants to walk to the river, and it's dangerous. Like, you see people on walking frames, and just getting across that road is not easy. And I guess that's the ultimate background to it. I sought the traffic information over several years for Victoria Avenue, but was regularly rebuffed. In November 2025, I had more success by lodging the application. The information received, I had one of Perth's preeminent engineers assess, and the data, and I've set out the data in this handout if I can provide that. The information's damning, absolutely damning, and it really confirmed my fear that there's an accident going to happen.
Mr. Bateman, what we'll do is we'll take your material.
Yeah.
We'll take your material on notice, and now we'll get the administration to respond, and we'll also formally respond to any other material that you can present to us tonight.
Could I just make a couple of comments about the traffic volume?
I think we've given you a fair shot. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
We'll look forward to receiving that.
I should have enough there.
Thank you.
And that provides all the technical background as to why I've been so fearful of an accident going to happen, and which is why I asked the question. There's no point acknowledging that there may be a problem if nobody does anything about it.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman.
So,
Here's the answer to your question.
Can I respond to your question? So before I do respond, I
didn't think I was going to get a response tonight.
So just an explanation that, so this response is based on the question you submitted, which wasn't specific to Victoria Avenue.
No. It came out of that fourth of... Yeah.
It's a fairly generalised response.
Yes.
So if I can, the town has a responsibility to investigate all reported or identified hazards as soon as possible. Appropriate remedies are applied to address any hazard permanently, or if not possible, to put temporary measures in place. At all times, the intention will be to make the situation safe. Allegations are sometimes made of situations as being dangerous, and the town investigates these by assessing information and data related to the alleged dangerous situation. The data analysis would usually provide guidance as to an acceptable approach to the allegation. This process usually takes some time. Firstly, to gather the information. Secondly, to assess the information. And lastly, to provide an appropriate response to the situation. On the matter of liability, this can only be assessed based on the facts of the matter, and really cannot be responded to in a hypothetical situation.
Okay. Understand.
So I'd probably just end that by saying, look, staff are available if you wish to contact staff and address those concerns in person. We'd be more than happy to arrange a meeting with you.
Thank you. My only comment on that was the information has been available for 3 to 4 years and no action has been taken.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bateman. I have to check my diary where I was on the 4th of March, but thank you for asking the question and thank you for being here tonight. Now calling Mr. Craig Kavanagh. Thank you. If you could state your name when you attend.
My name's Martha Kavanagh. I live at 12A College Road in Claremont.
Thank you, Martha.
I might give a bit of context. Seems you've given other people liberty to give context. I'm going to give some, even though I've been refused previously.
I don't mind a short preamble, of course.
I beg your pardon?
I don't mind a short preamble to your individual questions, of course.
Okay, that's the first time that's been allowed. We live at 12A College Road, and recently the council made a decision, or last meeting, to approve a change to the verge treatment policy for the town, particularly with regard to the definition of an adjacent property. Anyway, my question for council, and that has impacted us significantly, and we no longer have any access to a verge at the frontage of our property. Can the council please clarify how approved verge treatment currently in place in front of our property complies with the clauses 2.1c, 2.82b, 2 and 2.10b of the Activities and Thoroughfares Public Places Local Law, including the requirement for a 2 metre clearance a 2 metre clear pedestrian access adjacent to the curb where no footpath exists and no obstruction or on or around the verge, and whether the town has independently verified the available clearance on the approved verge treatment at this site.
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanagh. So the response is clause 2.1 of the local law refers to general prohibitions covering a range of activities, with clause C referring to the planting of plants. This is, however, overridden by the provisions of clause 2.8, which provides for permissible verge treatments. The quoted subclause 2.8b, subclause 2, refers to verges where no footpath has been provided. In the case of 12 College Road, the question is moot as a footpath has indeed been provided.
Only we can't access it if we park in front of the verge in front of our property across the verge. We can't access the footpath.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe
unless we go along the road.
Question 2, please.
Okay, so that was not a very good answer to the question.
The CEO did his best to answer your question. Question 2, please.
At what point does an approved verge treatment cease to function as a public verge land and instead operate as a practical obstruction to the public use? And what objective criteria does the town apply consistently when assessing pedestrian safety and accessibility, required clearances, streetscape consistency, as we now have Arizona in front of all along the verge on our street frontage, where we previously had 2 beautiful 40-year-old box trees, which were removed, one of which was removed during the Polly Shothole borer crisis that continues today, and an easy care lawn. Whether verge landscaping remains compatible with the public nature of the land.
CEO, please.
All verge treatments are assessed for safety and accessibility. In the case of 12 College Road, the verge treatment is considered appropriate as it does not impede pedestrian movement on the footpath. The verge treatment on any road frontage naturally varies, and the approved verge treatment is considered appropriate for the area in this case.
Another inadequate answer.
Question 3, please.
Given the town's verge landscape guidelines promote biodiversity, supportive planting, why was the use of ornamental agave and succulents only and large granite rocks with limited biodiversity value on the verge landscaping application? There was native plants of several different varieties that were said that were going to be planted but were not planted. Instead, it was second-hand succulents. So they didn't comply with the approved landscaping application. And the agave and succulents aren't listed on the recommended approved verge plant list supplied by the Town of Claremont or Water Corp, which the Town of Claremont refers to in its guidelines, and is not keeping with the existing streetscape at all.
CEO, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my spot. Question 3. Sorry, my apologies. So, Ms. Kavanagh, while natives are recommended for the reasons provided, as stated by yourself, the plant species in this case have been considered and found to be acceptable for that landscaped area.
Question 4, please.
Has the town undertaken any assessment of increased trip, fall or vehicle damage risk associated with the landscape verge and associated obstructions, including barriers all around the whole verge, especially in areas experiencing parking pressure, building activity and a constrained road width?
CEO, please.
Response to that question, Mr. Kavanagh, is the landscaped area at 12 College Road has been permitted to have a temporary protection barrier erected to prevent accidental damage to the planted area. Once well established, the barrier will be required to be removed. At this stage, there is no indication of the barriers being trip hazards, as they don't intrude into the road or footpath. They're considered to be sufficiently high to not be tripped over, and they're of a colour invisible to pedestrians using the adjacent footpath and to drivers of vehicles using the road.
And an absolute eyesore. Following the recent update to the policy EN 302 in the Town of Claremont Planning, is the Town of Claremont planning to review or amend the verge parking laws in the coming months? And if so, will the community be formally consulted and given an opportunity to provide input?
Thank you. CEO.
The response to that is that the town is currently reviewing 8 local laws, which includes the Parking Local Law 2016. The public have been invited to make submissions on the local law review by Friday, 26th of June 2026. Policy EN 302 does not relate to parking on verges. Rather, this policy supplements the town's activities on thoroughfares and public places local law and verge landscaping guidelines by providing guidance on permissible verge treatments on verges adjacent to properties.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Now calling Ms. Elizabeth Borthwick of Claremont, please.
Hello, thank you. I just have a couple of questions about the tree retention policy. Given that consultation on the proposed tree retention local planning policy closed in October last year, 2025, when is the policy expected next to come before Council?
Thank you, Mrs. Borthwick. So the response to that question is officers are working to finalise the draft LPP 211 and expect it to be advanced to Council for consideration in June or July.
Mm-hmm. Question 2.
And did the community consultation undertaken on the proposed tree retention local planning policy demonstrate significant community support for progressing the policy? And when will the consultation results be publicly released?
CEO.
Sorry, Mrs. Borthwick, the question of when they'll be publicly released will probably be a decision of the Council. but I can advise that the consultation received 154 responses. Of these, 139 supported the policy as advertised, and 9 responses raised issues and concerns. The overall response rate as a proportion of the population of the town is only 1.17% of the total town's population, noting that some of those respondents may not live in the town, but that's not to be seen as diminishing that response. It's still a significant response.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Now calling Ms. Sarah Allchurch, please.
Hi everybody, I'm also here to talk trees. Just 2 questions. Prior to the last local government election, all current councillors, candidates indicated in writing that they would commit to adopting a tree retention local planning policy if the community supported it. Given that the town has publicly stated, well, you've just told us immediately before, in fact, that community feedback was strongly supportive, does the council intend to progress the policy during the current term? That sounds like you've answered that question just before.
That's all right.
You can tell me again.
Obviously, I'm not the council, but
of course.
I can advise that from an officer point of view, there will be a revised policy prepared by officers and will be ready for the June or July council meeting. So not long to go.
Okay, that's exciting. Well, that kind of cancels out my second question, which was to ask a similar kind of a thing, which is, we just found out that Mosman Park's just adopted a very similar Walga-based policy, so it would be great to see Claremont do the same thing, along with Cambridge, Peppermint Grove, Cottesloe's looking at it, Nedlands. Yeah, I don't think you need to answer that second question because it's already been answered.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
I really look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ms. Allchurch. Okay, that completes public question time. Now coming into public statement time. Calling Ms. Renee Canterbury of Bayswater, please.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Renee Canterbury and I am the architect from Hocking Heritage and Architecture, assisting the owner of 14 Chester Road, Claremont, with their development application. Our firm specialises in the sensitive development of heritage places and have won numerous state heritage awards. In my expert opinion, the proposed works have been designed with immense care and consideration. They ensure minimal adverse impact to the significant heritage place at 14 Chester Road and the wider streetscape. In fact, the project has a largely positive impact on the heritage significance of the place and streetscape as a result of the numerous conservation and restoration works that will be undertaken. 14 Chester Road is a Category 2 place under the town's heritage list, a place of considerable significance, which is identified as being very important to the heritage of this locality. It has a high degree of integrity and authenticity. In comparison, the adjacent property at 12 Chester Road is a Category 3 place, a place of moderate significance. Number 12 is included in the heritage list as it was constructed prior to 1910 and has been identified as having lower integrity and authenticity. The proposed works to 14 Chester Road will have no impact on the identified cultural heritage significance outlined in the town's local planning survey for 12 Chester Road. Importantly, both the National Trust and Town's Heritage Officer have raised no objections to the works. Whilst the National Trust no longer has any statutory authority, it remains a highly respected, independent heritage body with a wealth of expertise. As such, their support for the project should be acknowledged. As experienced heritage architects, we designed these works to align with the principles of the Borough Charter, which is considered a guiding document for assessing works to a heritage place. Where practical, all additions are located so that they are screened from the streetscape with only the garage visible. The garage has been designed as a secondary structure to the existing heritage place, set back from the main facade. Consequently, it sits over 3 metres behind the building line of number 12, further back than the current structure. The new garage replaces an existing unsympathetic garage. The new form is more in keeping with the heritage place rather than providing a contrasting aesthetic that attracts from the streetscape. The new garden pavilion has been designed to reflect the architectural style and detailing of the main house. A key feature is the inclusion of a chimney. One of the elements of the heritage significance of 14 Chester Road is it demonstrates a high level of design. As such, any additions should be reflective of this. The proposed chimney provides visual interest in the parapet wall. Because the streetscape of the pavilion will be visible from the garden and the upper veranda, a high-quality, considered design outcome is entirely appropriate. The new fence will be a prominent element on the streetscape, and its scale, materiality and form must reflect that of the significant heritage house that it serves. 14 Chester Road is unique in the streetscape as being the only original two-storey heritage house. Any addition needs to respond to the scale of the house. The new front fence replaces an existing one, maintaining the exact same pier size to ensure no change to the streetscape impact. A traditional 2-brick pier width has been chosen to match the grand scale of the house. The piers have been carefully positioned to provide symmetry to the fence line and not create a disjointed aesthetic between it and the house. The northern vehicular gates align symmetrically with the new garage. Due to existing site constraints and vehicular movement requirements, this has meant that the deemed to satisfy provisions of the ARC codes cannot be met. However, the revised design introduces new palisade sections to vastly improve visibility compared to the current site arrangement. Whilst the project includes some new additions to meet modern living standards, above all, the project involves significant conservation and restoration works for the heritage house. Not only is the owner committed to conserving the original house, but they are also seeking to reinstate lost heritage detailing. Original slate roof tiles in 2 different colours have been uncovered in the roof space. The owner is reinstating a slate roof with different coloured slate, together with ornate terracotta ridge capping and finials. No small endeavour with a slate needing to be sourced from the UK, but it will result in quite a spectacular visual outcome to the street when coupled with the restored timber balconies and brickwork. It is often the case with the development on heritage sites that the deemed to comply outcomes of the ARC codes need to be considered and balanced against the identified heritage significance of a place. We believe that this has been done successfully in this application and that the design meets the design principles of the ARC codes while respecting and enhancing the heritage place. Thank you for your time considering this application this evening. We look forward to the opportunity for this significant asset to the Claremont streetscape to be restored to its former glory.
Thank you, Ms. Canterbury. Now calling Ms. Andrea Bondi of Perth, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, and I'm speaking to item 13.2.1, just following on from Renee. I'll try and make this as exciting as I possibly can, given it's a planning item, and appreciate that this has been before you a number of times already, so thank you for the opportunity to present again. So from the outset, I'd just like to thank the town's officers for their detailed assessment that they've undertaken, both before and after the March meeting when this was previously presented to the council. So following deferral, further consideration occurred with adjoining neighbours, and these matters were carefully reviewed but by not only the town staff but also us in the assessment of this application. Importantly, while the plans themselves have not changed since March, and we acknowledge that, the recommendation for approval has been maintained, but it has been strengthened through additional landscaping and screening conditions requiring the ongoing implementation and maintenance of boundary landscaping, specifically to address the visual privacy and overlooking concerns that were raised during the submission period. I just want to touch on the main planning aspects if I could, and then I'll also come to the landscaping and the screening towards the end. So firstly, I'd like to speak to the northern garage boundary wall. The neighbour raised concerns regarding the length, height and bulk of this boundary wall. However, figure 1 of the report that's before you tonight clearly demonstrates that the boundary wall is in fact shorter than the existing boundary wall that's on this site. So we believe that's a positive outcome in reducing the impact of bulk and scale on the neighbours. The remaining issue is therefore not the length of the wall, but also the limited additional height associated with the gable roof form for this garage. However, this part of the wall adjoins the neighbour's boundary wall and creates no impact to their bulk overlooking or natural loss of light. So that's also an important consideration here to consider where it's actually positioned on this site in relation to the neighbouring property. The neighbour has also raised concerns about historic impacts on their dining room window and possible future renovations, including future windows or skylights. While we understand that neighbours may have future plans, the application must be assessed against the existing development context and not the potential or the hypothetical future works that may or may not occur. So on this basis, we submit to Council here tonight that the minor variation to the height of the garage boundary wall is acceptable in this instance. I'll touch on the pavilion next. That's an important aspect of this application. So it's the pavilion structure is proposed to replace an existing pool house in the same location. However, we have a more considered design that is sympathetic to the heritage features of the main dwelling on this site. It's important to note that the pavilion has been significantly reduced in both scale and height from the earlier proposal that was previously refused by Council. The more dominant gable form that was previously abutting the northern boundary has been removed and replaced with a hipped roof that angles away from the boundary. Along the eastern elevation, so just refer to Figure 3 in your agenda report. It's particularly helpful to show what we mean. It shows that the pavilion sits adjacent to the neighbour's blank wall and side setback area rather than being adjacent to their primary outdoor living area, which is shown in green. While concerns have been raised around visual bulk, chimney height, material treatment and amenity impacts, we submit there is no unreasonable loss of sunlight, no overlooking from this boundary wall, no impact on ventilation and no material streetscape impact because of this pavilion is obviously located at the rear of the property. The upper floor balcony. So with respect to the upper floor balcony, probably one of the most important aspects of this proposal, so we just acknowledge that. I'll just get you to refer to figures 5 and 6 in your agenda for this item. The portion of the balcony shaded blue is the proposed balcony extension, which is quite an important feature to note of this development application. The remainder of the balcony currently exists and has a lawful planning approval with a setback of 5.4 metres without any screening. The proposed plans that you have before you today do not, the proposed plans don't propose to modify that in any way. That existing approved balcony will remain intact in its current position. The extension that we propose to the balcony will sit further back than what is existing, so it will sit back at 7.1 metres from the northern property boundary. So this is only a variation of 40 centimetres, so just a little bit more than a ruler. While the northern adjoining neighbour has raised concerns about potential overlooking from the balcony, the imagery provided in your report clearly demonstrates the extent of overlooking is so minor that it doesn't warrant physical screening of the balcony in this instance. It's also important to remember that Council's not being asked to approve a new balcony when none currently exists. And I just note the time and I will make sure I get this deputation done as quickly as possible for you. We believe this balcony is not going to exacerbate the existing situation that's already approved on site. But notwithstanding that, we do acknowledge that there is a concern and we are proposing planting trees along the boundary, which at maturity will provide an extensive canopy at height that will screen the adjoining outdoor area from any potential overlooking. While we stand by the fact that the overlooking variation in itself is extremely minor, the planting is proposed as a direct response to the neighbour's concern. So on balance, we submit that the proposal represents a well-considered planning outcome that appropriately responds to the site context, heritage character and adjoining properties, and is reinforced through the recommended conditions which we are supportive of. we've considered the neighbours' concerns, and it is our professional judgment that this application has done all it can to meet the relevant design principles of the R Code, and ultimately it satisfies those design principles and can be supported by Council. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Right on the bell. Now calling Mr. Michael Meller of Claremont, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present myself. My name is Michael Meller. I live at 63 Princess Road, and I have done so for the past 26 years, and hopefully I will still be there in 26 years' time to come. In response to the Council's support of the right-of-way lighting draft plan, I make the following submissions. And it's specifically in relation to right-of-way 28, which is from Princess Road to Hammond Road. Council supports the WAPC guidelines on crime prevention through environmental design, where it specifically states lighting design supports good surveillance, raises perceptions of safety, and deters offending. During the past 26 years, I'm not aware of any graffiti, criminal activity, or antisocial behaviour that warrants lighting. The only incident I am aware of was an isolated, trivial incident involving a young man that was under the influence of drugs where no charges were even laid. An important point I make about this incident is that it occurred at approximately midday, and hence no amount of lighting would have mattered in this matter. I'm not convinced that Council have based their decision to support the draft plan using a basis of statistical information on crime in our laneway. Perhaps it is Council following CPTD principles rather than an actual need for lighting. Perhaps it is state government policy being blindly applied by local government. My second point is, instead of the estimated capital spend of $807,000 to install lighting, I believe it would be more prudent to have an individual owners install their own lighting on the boundary wall in the darker parts of the laneway. Myself and others have done this with clear evidence that it casts sufficient lighting into the laneway. Point number 3, our laneway has a wonderful ambience, dominated by visible trees, plants, natural bush, and undergrowth. I and others believe that a series of lights and lampposts would strongly distract from this natural feel. Point number 4, and this relates not only to my property but to others that have their long boundary on the laneway. Most properties have their shorter boundary on the laneway. But my property is positioned with 38 metres of property or abutting joining the laneway. As a result, much of the private amenity of my home is built on this side of the property, including bedroom, bathroom, lounge, and dining room. It would be highly likely that any lighting installed along or near this section of the laneway would spill over to these parts of my home, which I'm sure you would agree is unacceptable. Council own this laneway, and my concern is that Council have the right to install a lighting strategy without the support of the landowners who will be affected. Consultation with property owners about this lighting is vastly different to decision-making about this lighting. I submit that a fairer method be adopted before any decision is made, and that includes having a minimal 70 to 75% support from adjoining landowners before any lighting proposal is implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Just note, in regard to statement number 2, $807,000 is for the cost of the whole laneway, not just the lighting, installed lighting.
Sorry, it's not just the lighting. I think it was just, no, that was just
Oh,
the
it's lighting, sorry, apologies, it's 807,000 is for installing lighting across all laneways.
Yes, all laneways, yes.
Correct.
Yes, I'm aware of that, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, applications for leave of absence, nil. Sorry? Okay. Oh, I've got it coming up now. Yeah, deputation, 8. Okay, item 8, petitions, deputation and presentations. We have a deputation from Alex McGlue, please.
Sorry there for a second.
That's all right. As you'll be aware, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, councillors. I am a lawyer with the firm Lavin, and I make this deputation on behalf of my clients, who are the owners of 12 Chester Road, in relation to the DA at item 13.2.1 of the agenda. My clients object strongly to this DA, as the proposed works would have a significant detrimental impact on the use and enjoyment of their property, especially in relation to their backyard. Council should therefore affirm its previous decision and refuse this DA. In terms of the history, this DA was originally refused for 7 different reasons, all of which had been recommended by the assessing officer and then adopted by council. The DA has since been through a confidential SAT mediation process, and the assessing officer is now recommending a conditional approval. It is, however, unclear why this change of position has occurred, as the plans do not seem to have changed to any great extent since the refusal. Council is not bound by the officer recommendation, and I say should only depart from the existing reasons for refusal if councillors are satisfied that all of the issues have genuinely now been resolved. I have provided a detailed written submission to council in advance, but in the interest of time, I'll confine this deputation to the 2 main issues from the perspective of my client, which are the proposed balcony extension and the proposed pavilion building. Both of these are non-compliant with the R-Code's deemed to comply standards, and both of these will stand to significantly impact upon my clients. In relation to the balcony, the DA proposes a significant extension to an upper level balcony. Importantly, if I could ask councillors to look at the image at page 50 of the agenda, figure 7, this shows that there is already a direct line of sight into my client's backyard, and indeed their outdoor dining table is clearly visible. Now, whilst we are looking at this image, I'll also observe that trees have already been planted in the position where vegetation screening is proposed to go. I'll observe that the only thing those trees are screening is the boundary wall. It is hard to see how extending the size of this existing balcony would satisfy the relevant R-Code's deemed to comply, the relevant R-Code's design principle, which refers to minimising direct overlooking of habitable spaces and outdoor living areas. Allowing this balcony extension would make an existing overlooking situation even worse, so council should again refuse the DA on this particular issue. Now, the officer report attempts to justify this situation by saying that not much of my client's backyard would be within a 7.5 metre cone of vision measured from the balcony, and by saying that screening vegetation will be planted. Now, in relation to the first of these points, this might be stating the obvious, but the average human can see further than 7.5 metres. There is still a significant overlooking issue here. The 7.5 metres is the deemed to comply standard, which it's irrelevant for present purposes. And in relation to the proposed condition for vegetation screening, what if the trees don't grow high enough? It's an unreliable measure. In relation to the pavilion, the plans show a roughly 8 by 6 metre building that's marked pavilion. The intended use of this building is unclear. It is assessed in the officer report as being an outbuilding, but nothing would seem to stop this from perhaps being used for something like a bedroom or short stay accommodation instead. The main concern from my client, however, relates to its size and its nil setback from the common boundary. Now, if councillors could please look at page 136 of the agenda and the top elevation, the pavilion is this blue shaded shape on this plan. Now, it can be observed that this shape has a significant length and would be as tall as the second storey ceiling of the proponent's house. Now, the relevant ARCODE's design principle for a nil setback building of this nature says that something should only be supported if it will, and I quote, not have any adverse impact on the amenity of the adjoining property. Owing to the sheer size of this structure and the proposed nil setback, this pavilion will be highly prominent and dominant and will undoubtedly impact upon my client's property, and it must therefore be refused. Just to quickly reply to a point made in one of the previous deputations, to the best of my knowledge, there wasn't actually any direct consultation with my client. The submissions might have been considered, but there was no direct discussions. So in conclusion, this DA relies upon multiple ARCODE's variations and contemplates an unsympathetic overdevelopment. The original issues have not been addressed, so council should take a principled stand here and again vote to refuse. An approval here would risk setting an adverse precedent whereby any property owner in Claremont may think that they can have overlooking balconies and nil setback buildings, even for heritage dwellings, which is something that should be avoided. So I therefore urge council to refuse this development application. If, however, council is not with me and is minded to grant approval, then I would request the imposition of the 6 additional conditions that are set out in paragraph 61 of my letter to go some way to address the impacts on my client's property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggler. Now moving a petition from Mr. Craig and Mrs. Martha Kavanagh. A mover and a seconder, please. Receives the petition from Craig and Martha Kavanagh relating to a review of a council policy EN 302, road verges, and 2, request the CEO prepare a report for council's consideration. Moved Councillor Swan, seconded Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. Item 9, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Moved. Anyway, back to the previous minutes. Anyone like to move? Yeah. Deputy Mayor Kelly and seconded Councillor Swan. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. Item 10, we do have confidential matters tonight, so it's an announcement of confidential matters for which the meeting may be closed to the public. 17.2.1, RFT 01-2026, electrical maintenance, repairs and services. 17.2.2, RFT 02-2026, civil infrastructure cleaning and maintenance. Item 11, business not dealt with from a previous meeting, nil. Item 12, reports of committee. 12.4.1, the minutes of the Lake Claremont Advisory Committee held on the 14th of May 2026. A mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Franklin and seconded Councillor Gersey. Councillor Franklin. Councillor Gersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the Lake Claremont Advisory Committee meeting, the meeting considered the petition to increase the size of the dog off-lead area. As there were opposing views about the petition regarding the number of people using the current area and whether there was a need to increase the size of the area of the off-lead area, the committee's advice was therefore on the recommendation of the Director of Infrastructure was to do a count of the number of people using the current off-lead area. And this would be used to provide information on which to base a decision about the petition. So the count will be completed over a 7-day period and the data will be used to make a recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gertie. Anyone else like to speak in favour or against? I'll put all those in favour. Carried. No dissent. Item 13, reports of the CEO. I'm just going to bring forward the items that I think the gallery are all here for tonight. So first up, I'll bring forward 13.2.2. Not that the rest of the meeting's not substantial and interesting. 13.2.2, right-of-way strategy review. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved Councillor Gertie and seconded Councillor Suan. Councillor Gertie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just let me get to my page.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So the draft right-of-way strategy has been revised as a direct result of the feedback that was received from residents. So initially, residents were advised of the draft right-of-way strategy through letters that were sent out. So there were 1,762 letters that were sent out, and an information session was held that was attended by about 60 people. In addition to this, various streets organised their own street meetings to discuss the issues, and then they made submissions to council expressing their concerns. A total of 98 submissions were received. So the residents' concerns generally related to how the upgrades would be funded, and there was considerable anxiety regarding the widening of lanes. Lighting was also a concern, which we've heard tonight, and there was concern regarding the very specific historic anomalies in the Langsford Street lanes. The residents also asked for clarity regarding what constituted support for or against the proposed changes. So all these concerns have been addressed in the revised draft right-of-way strategy, and this will again be advertised for public comment, and another public information session will be held. So all submissions from the public from both the original draft strategy plus the submissions from the revised draft strategy will be considered in the final document. So I'm very supportive of these changes and think that the revised draft strategy will address most of the residents' concerns. I particularly thank the administration for their quick response to the residents' concerns and for revising the draft strategy to reflect these concerns. So I support that this revised strategy go out again for public consultation and for another information session to be held. So I support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gertie. Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. I also firstly want to congratulate the administration on the process. I think I just want to start with why we have all been very keen to have this policy in the first place. We've had years and years of people complaining because we've had right-of-ways in poor condition with inadequate draining and servicing. So without a policy in place, our hands are tied. We can't help with those repairs that are required. However, what this has flushed out is some really great feedback. So the first level of engagement has really showed enormous interest, and I'm also very happy with the response relating to widening the roads, around the funding, around the lighting concerns, around roads, right-of-ways 39 and 40. However, these are still significant changes. The community deserves to see them again, which we will do. Nothing is locked in until the process is complete and all submissions will be considered. So we're on the right path. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. Deputy Mayor Kelly.
I have a couple of amendments to the recommendation, if I might.
Yes,
Mr. Mayor. The first, and I think they should come up on the screen. The first is to Part 2B to be modified to replace the word will with may, so that 2B now would read, confirm that the proposed funding source of right-of-ways construction program may be through normal budget allocations for infrastructure capital works programs considered on the annual basis, as is detailed in this report. And the second amendment is to add a new Part 6, which is to read, Council implement a pilot construction program for an existing town-owned right-of-way in the 26-27 financial year, with the specific right-of-way to be selected by the Council, funding of $80,000 to be allocated in the draft 26-27 budget for these works. And the reason for these two amendments, the 2B reference to may rather than will is to be consistent with the direct references to the other changes in the proposed draft strategy. And the second one, which is the reason, is to deal with the concern that Council needs to remain committed to testing construction costs in association with the strategy. I'm happy to expand on by way of explanation if I can get a seconder.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fernandez. Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, the first amendment is to give some discretion to Council so that it's not, excuse me, not in the policy to require the Council to pay for the costs of any upgrades, that there may be other ways of funding it. The second, it's probably more importantly, is that we do need to test the strategy at some point in time. We did discuss the other night in the forum about maybe deferring it until the subsequent financial year and deal with the worst condition laneways. But I believe that we should take one of the council laneways, the worst of the council-owned laneways, and run a pilot consistent with the policy, just to make sure that we are all comfortable with the policy as it currently stands or is currently going out for consultation, so that we can make any other additional minor adjustments if we need to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yes. As we discussed in our concept forum, basically we figured the desire of the council was not to leave the test scenario till next financial year, because initially our plans were to try to look at some of the worst laneways, but we were advised by the administration that the dedication process could take up to a year, so that means it would be a year before the council had the right to do anything on these laneways. So in the interim, what we decided was we could do an $80,000 pilot project on one of the ones we own to actually prove up the costing, so that when we budget next year, we can actually be more firm in the numbers we budget. And I think it is a good amendment.
Anyone else like to speak for the amendment? Anyone else like to speak against? I'll speak for, just for the clarification. I think it's not our intention at this point in the draft policy to put forward a special area rate at this point. So I can support it on that basis. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. Back to the motion as amended. Anyone like to speak for the motion as amended? Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is something that's been gnawing away at us for at least the last 5 years. As we're well aware, some of the laneways are in incredibly poor condition. They're in very good positions, but bad condition. And they have contributed, in some cases, to significant flooding, very significant flooding. We've been constrained because of the ownership of laneways, the few that we have ownership for. We can spend ratepayer money on, but we can't spend public money on private laneways. So we've got a long process to go through to recover and get control of those laneways, and that number is more significant than the council. owned laneways, and they're in a much poorer condition. So rather than delay the process of testing the policy, that was the reason for the amendment, was to take one of our own ones and run the policy. The other important point, I think, is that I don't want the community to think that this is something that we are thrusting upon every property that abuts a laneway. We have had many, many concerns over the years about the condition of the laneways. Again, most frequently about the privately owned ones. So this is something that we've been working on for a number of years, and we've had some excellent work from David, who's leaning on his hand on the screen up there, putting all of these laneways into a catalogue, identifying the condition, identifying the owner of the laneway. So it's been a lot of work behind the scenes, but I don't think it's the intention of council to go out tomorrow and start work on all of these laneways. We won't be doing it unless there's support from the adjacent owners to that laneway wanting it. Now, therein lies one of the issues in the policy, and that is, well, do we need to get 70%? Do we need to get 75%, 80%, or 100%? So that is something that people may want to comment on, which is in the policy. But I think overall, it's heading in the right direction. It's going to be largely or predominantly voluntary, and so we need to undertake a pilot, which is the purpose of the amendment. So if the resolution gets up, then that's embedded into the resolution, and so we can proceed subsequent to putting the whole thing out to consultation again. We can proceed with that pilot. The fact that we're putting it out for consultation again, I think, is indicative of the behaviour of this council, in that we don't just put it out once and then make the amendments that we think we need to make and resolve to make a decision in relation to the policy and sign off on it. We realise it's sensitive to a number of residents, so we're making refinements on the first round of consultation and put it out again. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kelly. Anyone like to speak against? Anyone like to speak for? No? I'll speak for. Look, it's been a long time coming, probably over 100 years coming to get to this point. So I agree with Deputy Mayor Kelly and the other councillors here tonight that a second round of consultation on this issue is extremely important, and I'm extremely pleased, for example, that we've listened to the residents of Langsford Mary in regard to the pedestrian footpath, which is now right of way 40. Also in regard to the Langsford Mary Street laneway, which is 39, which goes onto Googery Street, and to the owner of 2 Mary Street, that their garage actually uses that. And if we can recall, as noted in the strategic document, the strategy document, that was caught up in the original bus port that was going to go up on Googery Street. And thankfully, at that time, the residents of Makesford and Mary Street rose up then and said, no, well, we think we'd prefer the bus port down in its current location, which is opposite Claremont Quarter. So we've now got that straight. There will be some other interesting scenarios which Mr. Vinicombe's pointed out. For example, laneway 38, which abuts the Shell petrol station, which we need to do some more work and strategic thinking about once we get more feedback on our Policy 138 in regard to Strategic Plan 138. But we'll continue to go through the process with our residents. So for that reason, I support it. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. We'll now move to 13.2.1, 14 Chester Road, and Councillor Brown will leave the room. I've a mover, please, for 13.2.1, 14 Chester Road. Councillor Gersey, and a seconder. No seconder. Right, motion is lapsed.
Does anyone have any other motions on the floor?
Okay. Okay. Which takes advice from the Director of Planning.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, the options now are for Council to affirm that they do not intend to approve it, so in other words, to refuse it, and the Council would need to provide some reasons for that refusal. And if that is their intention, or the other option is to put forward an alternative form of approval, and that would need to contemplate and explain the variations if that was in fact your intention.
Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Happy to move a refusal.
To work through this wording.
Yep.
And I assume through you, Councillor Kelly, that is Council going to provide some reasons with that?
Some reasons. Yep. And
we'll wait for Councillor Kelly. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Yep. I think you need the reasons as
yeah.
At the end. Yeah. Okay.
So if I could, you need both. You need reasons at the end for voting contrary to the recommendation, but you also, in the decision, you need to provide some reasons for the decision, because that's what
I'm happy to do them now. Put the reasons up now if you want.
Could, but that would be good.
It'll take a while to get them transcribed, I suspect. That's all.
That's right. We'll just work our way through it one point at a time, I think.
And I'm working off the previous resolution of December 2014, so it's maybe easier if you...
Through the Chair, it is Council's prerogative to devise reasons for refusal, and you may refer to an earlier decision if that helps you state your reasons, if you believe that those reasons are still valid to this revised application.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Interim Director. Some of them are and some of them aren't, so that's why I'm being selective. Well, this is in my view. Some of them are no longer valid. So, you need a second. Yeah, of course.
You can proceed, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. So it's to read that Council refused to grant a development approval for the proposed additions and alterations to the existing single house lot 35 and 36 14 Chester Road, Claremont, as shown on the amended plans. The first reason, the proposed development does not satisfy the design principles of clause 5.1.3. I can hand them in later if that helps, I don't know. Lot boundary setbacks of the Residential Codes Volume 1 as the dwelling proposes boundary walls to be to the pavilion that negatively impact the amenity of the adjoining properties at 12 Chester Road and 4 Agate Road as detailed in this report. Yeah, I know. Yep, okay. And delete 4 Agate Road because they haven't actually put in the submission. The second reason is the proposed development does not satisfy design principles of Clause 5.4.1, Visual Privacy Residential Design Codes Volume 1, as proposed balcony on the northern elevation increases the direct overlooking of the active inhabitable spaces and the primary outdoor living areas of the adjoining property at 12 Chester Road. The next reason is the proposed development does not satisfy the design principles of Clause 5.4.3 Outbuildings Residential Design Codes Volume 1, as the proposed building has a negative visual amenity impact on the adjoining property at 12 Chester Road. The next is the proposed development does not comply with the Local Planning Policy 123, retention of residential character relative to the upper floor encroachment into the rear third of the lot and the negative amenity impacts of the adjoining property at 12 Chester Road. The next is the proposed development is inconsistent with the matters of the local government must have due regard to contained in Clause 67, parenthesis 2 of Planning Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 215 in regard to the following requirements. B, the proposal does not adhere to the orderly and proper planning as per the Local Planning Scheme number 3 relative to the proposed carport setback. G, the proposal is inconsistent with the planning policy requirements to address building bulk and setbacks of the upper floor extensions. And M, the development is incompatible with the existing or desired character of its setting, particularly concerning the development on adjoining land and within the locality, given its height, bulk and scale relative to the boundary walls proposed for the rear pavilion and upper floor balcony. And if I could speak to Mr. Mayor?
Do we have a second? Yeah, Councillor Franklin. Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm not going to dwell on all of the aspects that I've put down as a reason, but primarily there are two that I do want to focus on. Bear in mind that this is a difficult decision for this council because we have both properties, the applicant's property and the adjoining neighbour who's got the predominant complaints or concerns in relation to the DA. We've got one that's trying to improve and enhance the heritage characteristics and protect the building, which is in a fairly poor state in some aspects of it. And we have the other that's trying to protect their amenity and also their own property, which is also heritage listed, admittedly at a slightly lower category. So the original DA was actually recommended by the administration, but rejected unanimously by this council previously. And they did give 7 reasons, and 5 of those I have resubmitted as the reason for the current rejection. I'm glad there has been some concessions, but at the same time, there's been changes and alterations that have been, I think, in my view at least, detrimental, particularly in relation to the pavilion. So as a result of the council decision, the matter was taken to SAT for consideration and mediation, and then back to this council. This isn't about the proposed works in relation to whether they are in keeping with the heritage building or not, and in particular in referencing the borough charter, which is something that we generally embrace when we're dealing with heritage buildings in this municipality. So it's not a criticism of the design, it's largely about the impact and the amenity of the neighbour. So it's not a design issue. But the first one is in relation to overlooking and the suggested attenuation of that overlooking, which is going to be generated by the addition to the balcony. This council, when it did have planning powers, and we don't actually, we've had planning powers removed from councils in Western Australia, other than heritage listed buildings and a couple of other categories. But in the past, when we did, we have always tried to ameliorate overlooking by requiring higher windows, by requiring opaque glazing to windows in circumstances where they're overlooking, and we have, to my knowledge, tried once in terms of foliage. Now, which is the recommendation in tonight's agenda. All three of those have been largely unsuccessful. We've had louvers suggested, which can be open and closed at various times. We've had opaque glazing, which has been removed by the current owner or a subsequent owner because they weren't even aware it was a planning condition that would apply to the development. So it's a very difficult area to work with, and probably one of the only ways you can be sure of it, of mitigating that, is some kind of hard screening. So that's principally one of the significant issues. And the code requires minimal direct overlooking and maximum visible privacy to the side and rear boundaries. Now, this property, it's to the side boundary and the overlooking directly into the habitable space, including the rear outdoor habitable space. The second area in particular is that in relation to the pavilion. Now, we're not quite sure what the pavilion's intention is. So there's no detail in the plans. There's no whether there's toilets or whether there's facilities at all within the pavilion. The residential design code principles require that does not have an adverse impact when it's on the boundary. And I draw you to page 136. I was going to bring it up on the screen, but it has been provided to us tonight. Now, if you look at the top elevation on page 136, the extreme left side of that is effectively the shaded area is the pavilion. That pavilion is right on the boundary. There is no elevation showing the impact of the pavilion from the northern neighbour's side. There's no elevation from the northern neighbour's side that shows that. But that pavilion, with a nil setback, it is 8 metres long, and the height at the pitch of that pavilion roof is in line with the gutter line of the second story.
Deputy Mayor Kelly will provide you with an extension of time if that's your wish. We'll have a mover. Councillor Suhan and seconded Councillor Fernandez for a further 5 minutes. Thank you.
I don't need 5 minutes.
All those in favour? Carried. That is in.
So that the ridge line of that pavilion, which, remember, is sitting on the boundary, is in line with the second story gutter. It's an extremely, I think, significant impost on the neighbouring property, where the code says, or the design code says, that it shouldn't have an adverse impact. And the report, I think, refers to, it says limited impact. And I'm sorry, I just simply can't agree with it, that it only has limited impact. So it's 8 metres long, the boundary wall. It's 6 metres wide, and I'm struggling to determine how actually high it is, but in measurement. But it's certainly the ridge line is parallel with, as on page 136, is parallel with the second story. So it's effectively like having a second story, 8 metres long, right on your boundary, adjacent to your outdoor living space. So, Mr. Mayor, just in summing up, I don't think this is a reasonable outcome. It's certainly not a reasonable outcome that I want to be associated with. Unfortunately, because of the way it's now been through the SAT process, under normal circumstances, when we did have planning powers, this is the very essence of what this council was good at, was sitting down with the applicant and the neighbour and reaching some sort of amicable outcome. Now, this has been prevented in this circumstance, and I understand that. So I can only argue for it to go back to SAT and let the SAT process run its full course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kelly. Councillor Fernandes. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think Deputy Mayor Councillor Kelly has eloquently addressed all of the concerns I certainly have, and I agree that the bulk and scale of the pavilion is my main concern. It's extraordinary how big it is, and we have, as Councillor Kelly has said, we've seen the other amelioration measures not be very effective, and I'm very sympathetic to the owners of 12 Chester Road, and it'd be great to see a pavilion that's more like a little pavilion, you know, something like a tennis or a pool pavilion, single story, something not as high as the second story of the main building. It's just, I don't know what they're going to do in there.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. Anyone like to speak against? Anyone like to speak for? I'll speak for. I too have concerns over the pavilion, predominantly. Like you, I'm surprised by the height, given it's a pavilion, in essence. So I think some of the other measures that have been taken so far, for example, the front fence, the garage, to a certain extent with the veranda and the addition, I'm a little bit sympathetic in that regard, but the pavilion needs to be addressed. So for that reason, I'm supporting the motion as put. I'll put it. All those in favour? Carried notice. We'll invite Councillor Brown back in now. Welcome back, Councillor Brown. 13.1.1, 2026-27 proposed differential rates and minimum payments. A mover and seconder. Yeah. So that's the amended recommendation. Yeah. So I'll put the officer amended recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kelly? I've got no further comment. Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Just to tidy up as I see it.
Yes. Anyone else like to speak for the amended officer recommendation? Anyone like to speak against? I'll put it. All those in favour? Carried notice then. 13.1.2, list of payments, the 1st to the 31st of March 2026. Mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Franklin. Seconded Councillor Brown. Councillor Franklin? No. Councillor Brown? No. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. 13.1.3, monthly statement of financial activity for the period ended 30th of April 2026. A mover and a seconder. Moved. Councillor Swan. Seconded. Councillor Fernandez. Councillor Swan. No. Councillor Fernandez. No. Put it. All those in favour. Carried. No dissent. 13.1.4, policy LG 516, fees, allowances and expenses for council members. A mover. Councillor Getty. A seconder. Councillor Swan. Councillor Getty. No? Councillor Swan. No? I'll put it. All those in favour. Carried. No dissent. 13.1.5, policy EN 308, graffiti eradication policy. A mover and a seconder. Moved. Councillor Franklin and seconded Councillor Brown. Councillor Franklin. No. What? Councillor Brown. No. Anyone like to speak against? Anyone like to speak for? I'll speak for. I thank the administration for putting that together. I think the speed here is of essence, both in terms of council property and also, when deemed necessary, residential property. We just can't have graffiti in our community, so I appreciate this coming to council. I'll put it. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. 13.1.6, minor delegation review. A mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Fernandez and seconded Councillor Swan. Councillor Fernandez.
I think it's just a simple amendment to give the CEO a bit more discretion given the rapidly rising fuel costs and the direction that we have to take to renegotiate contracts. So it just prevents everything from coming up and coming back to council. So I think it's a very sensible motion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councillor Swan. Nothing to add. I'll put it. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. 13.1.7.
If I could, Mr. Chair, Mayor, could I put forward a suggestion that Council, after the discussions last night, defers this item to a future Council meeting to allow further discussion.
And we'll bring it back to a concept forum.
I think it should be a motion.
Yep. Yep. Move Councillor Gacy, seconded Councillor Franklin. Defer it back. Yeah.
Should withdraw at the meeting.
Yeah. Put it. All those in favour? Carried. No dissent. Okay. Where are we going? That's it. Yeah, we are. Yeah, 14. Okay. Councillor Brown. Here we are.
So I was out of it first. I attended the Foreshore committee meeting last week where they're I'm fairly new to this committee, but the items seem to be getting shorter. So thanks to the committee for bringing those. And one of those items as well was just deferred, so I look forward to that report. That's it from me. Thank you.
Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a busy month for me. I was writing down my list. I thought, wow, it's been a big one. So started with going to the Autumn in Motion fashion event at Claremont Quarter, where all the beautiful people did the fashion for the new season. It was very luscious and lovely. We had a concept forum. I volunteered and spent money at the DRE Pre-Love Fashion Sale, which is run by Councillor Franklin. Congratulations, Councillor. Another wonderful event for a great charity. I went to that afternoon at Lake Claremont, which was really well run. It's in its infancy, so it wasn't big crowds, but I think it was a really lovely event as well. Attended the youth photo competition, lots of talented young people in our community, so great to see the way they interpreted the different themes. I went to the Lake Claremont Tennis Club Trophy Night for the end of the season. Very proud club, and ages 18 through to 90, so it was a wonderful evening. Also attended the Red Cross bin dairying sale at Claremont Showgrounds, an incredible event. It was absolutely packed. They raised $344,000 for Red Cross, so well done to them. I attended the volunteer thank you event to thank our volunteers for all the hours they put in helping support communities in Claremont, and also attended the Foreshore Advisory Committee with Councillor Brown. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Simon. That's a big workload. Wow. Whew, you ate your money. Okay, Councillor Gassi.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying thank you very much to Tim, our interim CEO, for doing such a good job, because this is your last meeting, I believe. And yeah, it's obviously not an easy thing just to step into the middle of a council and take over, and I think you've done a brilliant job, so thank you very much. I attended a photo shoot with the Mayor for the bin dairying fashion parade. I also attended the Claremont Quarter Autumn Fashion launch with all the beautiful people. I wasn't one of them. I went to the History in a Coffee Cup, which was held this time at St Aidan's Church, because the museum can only hold 60 people, and they now get 120 people at the History in a Coffee Cup, so incredibly popular. I attended an afternoon at Lake Claremont. I was the MC for that, and we had a performance from Yuri Yakin, and it was a really lovely afternoon. So, as Councillor Suan said, not a big crowd, but a very enthusiastic crowd. I also attended the youth photography competition. Fabulous to have an arts event for kids and see all their fabulous work. And I also attended a Lake Claremont Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Gassi. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I attended the Lake Claremont Advisory Committee meeting as Chair, and I think we've had a couple of forums which are busy. I'm not nearly as busy as Councillor Suan, but the clothing sale that was conducted in this space was very successful. We raised over 18,000. It might even get up to 20, which will enable us to set up a computing centre for very underprivileged children and teach adults in a very underprivileged community how to use computers, which will make them all work ready and give them a huge edge over other people in the community so they can get work and our project can become more self-sufficient. So thanks to the Claremont CEO and staff for allowing us to hold it here. And I hope everybody got some fabulous buys, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. It was a great success. All credit to you. Deputy Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm feeling inadequate because I didn't go to any clothing sales or any fashion parades, but I did donate some clothes. Yeah, multiple forums, but I was away for about 10 days, so I was unable to go to the youth photography event and a couple of others, but I did get to the Lake Claremont event from a distance until my crutches got the better of me and thought, no, I'm not going to make it that far down the road, down the fairway, or with practice golf fairway. So I did see it from afar, Jill. So I did in part. I was there in spirit and almost there in physical terms. I did manage to go to the centenary football game at the Claremont Oval on Saturday with the Mayor. It was their centenary game, and they played East Perth on the very first game of their existence, and so they were playing East Perth on Saturday. Unfortunately, I must have been a bad omen because they didn't actually win. They've won every other game, I think, this year, but they didn't win the centenary game, which is a bit unfortunate. But it was a great event and a lot of support. We met the new incoming CEO, who's coming from East Perth, ironically enough, and many other people that were well known in the community. It was like old boys' day with the old footballers there, and they're all out on the oval holding up their respective waffle cups, and Mossy was the centrepiece along with John O'Connell and the sort of many of the founding fathers, if you like, of Claremont. So it was a really, really good event and well patronised and really well organised. They are keen, I think it would be fair to say, to continue a close relationship with the council, which is a great thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Also just note, Deputy Mayor Kelly, your and this council's previous involvement in establishing of the North East Precinct, that was noted. The fine building that we had lunch in, being the Claremont Football Club, and it's stated now as one of the preeminent, if not the preeminent, waffle club that bears our name, Claremont Football Club. But it was noted, and thank you to Deputy Mayor Kelly's leadership in the day and the council of the day to make that North East, and the administration of the day to make that North East Precinct happen, which I think has been a standout around waffle ovals still to this day. Councillor Fernandez.
Not as busy a month as some of my other fellow councillors. We didn't do any closing things, but I did do concept forums afternoon at the lake. It was brilliant. I think it attracted a different demographic than we normally see at other events. It was a lot of families and young kids. It's always nice to have something that caters to different demographics. What else? We did the youth photo exhibition, which was fantastic. And then the Youth Volunteer Awards. Sorry, not the Youth Volunteer Awards. We didn't have any youth volunteers, did we? I've also started the local government diploma, and I've finished the first 2 units. So yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. We acknowledge all of the preceding activities, of which some I was involved in and some I wasn't. But I would say that I also did the Poppy Walk, which is absolutely fantastic, and all credit to the museum staff and the volunteers. It was amazing. I mean, you walk around it, you realise you walk around this town with its history since 1898, and you're always learning something new. I learned about the St. Aidan's church window as you walk in on the left. Learned about the Teachers' College and the significance of the War Memorial and the service of the people associated with the Teachers' College. I also learned and want to find out where our fine plane, our de Havilland plane's gone from Avion Way, and to try and convince the Director of Infrastructure there's a spot in the master plan for the park to yeah, well, we remember it. We don't know where it's gone. We think it's maybe down at the RAF, down the freeway. But really, and it came up again on Volunteers Day. What a fantastic resource we have at the museum. Absolutely unbelievable. We're so privileged to have within our community a resource where we can track back and research back to 1898. And as Councillor Gersey said, the history in a coffee cup is also a great resource. I'll also be joining ex-Councillor Chris Muse to have a look at the boat shed and go on a boat shed tour with Chris in due course. Councillor Franklin, do you have?
I sadly couldn't attend that historical walk. Yes. Is there a written version of it that we can access, or is it possible we can hold it again sometime in the future?
We can definitely.
That same walk.
Yeah, Councillor Franklin, we can definitely hold it again. It was absolutely brilliant. We ended up actually at the train station and learning about the troops leaving and the stories in regard to the post office and the young children going and posting letters as the troops were leaving. And then finally, to our interim CEO, thank you, Tim. Job well done on the honour board. Stay in touch. We'll have a drink with you tonight. But you know your work's much appreciated. Okay. Item 15. Elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given nil. Item 16, new business of an urgent nature approved by the person presiding or by decision of the meeting nil. Item 17, confidential items. Motion to close the door. That in accordance with section 5.2.32 of the Local Government Act 1995, the meeting is closed to members of the public with the following subsections applicable. Section 5.23, brackets 4C, information contained in the tender received by the local government for a contract to the extent that the information, 1, is a tender price, or 2, a tendered methodology for calculating a price. I move Councillor Brown and seconder. Moved Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour? Carried. Notice sent. Motion to open the doors. Mover and second mover, Councillor Franklin, second Councillor Brown. All those in favour? Carried. Notice sent. Item 17.2.1, RFT 012026, electrical maintenance, repairs and services. That Council 1 accepts, subject to the execution of the relevant contract documentation, the submission from Platinum Electricians Pty Ltd for the provision of electrical maintenance, repairs and services to the town of Claremont for the period of 2 years with a possible 1-year extension in accordance with RFT 01-2026, and 2, authorises the CEO to execute the contract and any associated documentation to give effect to this decision. Item 17.2.2, RFT 022026, civil infrastructure cleaning and maintenance. That Council 1 accepts, subject to the execution of relevant contract documentation, the submission from Clean City Group for the provision of civil infrastructure cleaning and maintenance to the town of Claremont for the period of 2 years with a possible 1-year extension in accordance with RFT 022026. 2, authorises the CEO to execute the contract and any associated documentation to give effect to this decision. Item 18, future meetings of Council will be the special Council meeting of the 15th of June. Item 19, we declare the meeting closed at 8:49. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, administration.